I'm Finn Bradshaw. I'm as is introduced, the online sports editor at the Herald Sun. Interesting time to be working in a major media organisation, particularly one that's had so much success in print. We're lucky in Melbourne where our circulation's hardly declining at all, but if you look overseas, it's really under threat. You know, particularly in the States, they're really struggling to hold on to readers, struggling to, there's layoffs all the time. So, I'll give you a little bit of background about myself, and then talk about sort of the way we're changing things at the Herald Sun to try and actually get ahead of the game, which is not something that News Limited did when the internet first came along. I've been at the Herald Sun for about 2.5 years. Prior to that, I worked with media giants on the AFL website. I was an editor of a music magazine, but actually one of my first jobs out of uni was working on a basketball website. We actually had live streaming audio of basketball matches in 2000. It was the height of the .com boom. I think we averaged about 5 listeners a game. Broadband hadn't quite gotten there. It was really paid and really short-lived job. That was my memory of the .com boom. Since my time at the Herald Sun, it's been amazing to see the change there. When I started, there was one guy looking after both the Herald Sun front page and the Super Footy page, which had been created when the Herald Sun knew that he did footy really well, and they thought that was the best way to get into the online space, and they wanted to create a separate brand to the Herald Sun that would attract people who maybe weren't traditional Herald Sun readers. That's really interesting compared to the shift that's going now, where it's all about building the Herald Sun brand online, but I'll get to that later. Now we have, I think, 4 full-time people working just on the sports section, plus casuals through the weekends. It's been just a phenomenal change in both the attitude and then the willingness to put resources into it there. At the beginning of this year, we didn't have any of our journos on Twitter. I had to do this presentation to the sports journos, and I was talking about how we're going to bring out the Supercoach app and the Super Footy app, and Mike Sheen put up his hand and said, "What's an app?" We haven't quite got Mike onto Twitter just yet, but we've got John Ralph, Mark Stevens, Jay Clark, Sam Edmund all really active in there, and that's been really important to where we are as a media organisation in this new space. Anyway, I've been asked to talk about how technology is affecting the media. It's kind of like asking how vuvuzelas are affecting the World Cup. You can't overstate how much everything is being affected by it. It's how people consume it, how we create it. Even the layout of the office at the Herald Sun is changing because of technology. I just want to make a sort of a disclaimer. I'm not going to go through and try and convince you all about how we're going digital. We need to get there. Just take that as a given. I'm just talking as a guy who's on the front line of the media, of the online and digital publishing every day, kind of in the trenches, if you like. I'm not going to talk about how the trend is going away from major media corporations. I think it's really important for large newspapers to still exist, because I think they provide the depth and research that journalism needs to help people become better citizens, which is what journalism really should be about. I think the trend in the States will be interesting to see, towards the Huffington Posts, that away from New York Times, places like that. But in Australia, we're lucky. We still sell 500,000 copies of the Herald Sun every day, and that gives us a really solid base to go into the online space. Anyway, the first question we should tackle is technology killing newspapers or traditional media? No. A couple of years ago, I think you could have maybe made that case when you look at the way Craigslist, what it was doing to newspapers in the States, the impact that blogs and personal sort of social media was having on newspaper traffic. But I think it's almost crossed over now. Now it's a real benefit to the way we reach out to people, the way that we get people to pull them back to our content. Everyone uses Facebook and everyone uses Twitter now, and we can use those to interact with it. And it's also in a way that we can really build our brands. It took 20 years for Mike Sheen to get where he is in terms of recognition through doing 3RW and Fox Sports and writing his columns. Now the first-year journos are known because they're doing live chats, because they are on Twitter, and they've almost got their own opinion pieces outside the paper. But So, you know, in Australia, the combination of the dominance and our ability to use this new technology is great, but the question is, how do you monetize that? That's the key question. My ultimate boss, Rupert, you know, has been really aggressive in that space. I think News Limited has been sort of most vocal out of every media company talking about how they're going to do that. You know, just a couple of days ago, they put all of the Times website in England behind a paywall, which is a phenomenally risky thing. You know, they say that as long as they keep 5% of their traffic paying for it, they reckon that's worthwhile. But then you wonder what the flow-on effects are if people aren't talking about it, if people aren't sharing it. It's, you know, I'm really glad that they're doing that experiment, not us. Well, I think every media organisation in the world is going to see what's happening there. I'll just give you a little background to Super Footy in particular, because that's been my baby. Ask my wife. It's been my life for the last 3 years. And what we've done and how we've done it, and kind of, you know, the way that changing technology has affected what we do, and hopefully what we'll do in the future that will convince people to pay for that content. Since 2008, we've been averaging 50% growth year on year. When I started working at Super Footy, we were about 50% of the equivalent traffic within The Age. The Age has always had much greater online traffic than News, because to their credit, they got in that space really early. Now we have at least 50% more traffic in sport than The Age every week. We outperform, you know, we outperform the Adelaide Now website, we outperform Perth Now website. No doubt that's because Melburnians just love their footy through and through, but I think it's also because we've just been so prepared to back ourselves in that space. And also right at the heart of it, of course, has been Supercoach, as Peter directed it to before. We've now, I think, just ticked over 380,000 players in that alone this year, which I'm not sure if, you know, if it's healthy how much Melburnians love footy, but we're very grateful for it. So the absolutely key thing, and the greatest challenge that I've faced coming into the Herald Sun, you know, I hadn't worked in the organisation before. I was almost the first person they hired as a web content expert, and that's not because I was necessarily expert, but they brought me in for that role. I wasn't a journalist who'd been working in a newspaper that they kind of pushed into that role, which had been what had happened previously, was changing it from journalists used to publishing maybe one story a day, and there's many people in that building who probably weren't doing that much, to thinking about the online space as somewhere that was valid and somewhere that they wanted to publish. We're trying to get it to be a 24/7 newsroom, but we're not trying to be in Reuters or an AAP. We're not trying to cover you know, the minutiae of events. We want to put our journalistic IP on top of it. And so for journalists, until recently, still getting a back page was the way that they validated what they were doing. And to change the culture inside so that getting a, you know, breaking news or an exclusive on the top of the Herald Sun sports section was just as important to them as being a really interesting process to go through. And now, you know, it's gone from that to where we've got some, you know, technical issues that sometimes mean it's hard for us to publish in a speedy time, should I say, and you get journalists standing over your shoulder saying, when's it going to be published? When's it going to be published? So you've gone from having to convince them it's worthwhile to having to damp down their expectations and telling them that 10 minutes is still quite quick compared to where you were a year ago. So, you know, we've got a real benefit of journalists there who are breaking news and get stuff that no one else has, but the other change has been to tackle things that everyone knows is going, but make it an immediate experience for your reader. You know, one of the reasons why I was late today was Ben Cousins was going to make his first statement after he was carried into the Epworth. And so, of course, it's very important to get a story and analysis and video up quickly, but we ran a live chat through it so that the readers were, you know, seeing the press conference through our journo's eyes. And I don't think Ralphie would have looked up because he was tweeting almost exclusively through the press conference. One of the most moving things I've ever done as a journalist was doing a live chat when Jim Steins had his press conference to announce that he had almost terminal, a really serious cancer. And, you know, you conveyed that information in the first minute, but then the next 20 minutes was about people being able to share their feelings and experience it with other people. And sure, they do that on other social media too, but we provided a focal point for people to do that, and you know, it got a little dusty in the office when that was going on. As the Herald Sun, what we want people to do is come to us because they trust our content. Now, we did have one issue a couple of years ago where we blew a bit of that trust by calling something wrong, only by about 4 weeks, but we got it wrong, when Terry Wallace was still at Richmond. So there's been you assume people would trust the Herald Sun because it's the Herald Sun, but the online community isn't like that. Everyone's used to challenging it. They can get their information from plenty of sources, but we don't want people to have to go and check our information. We want them to trust what we have to say. So the greatest way, what I've found really useful about technology in doing that is using Twitter and the live chats, so that these people aren't just bylines by themselves at the top of an article. They become real people, and so all of a sudden it's not just a journalist said, but it's Ralphie, who they follow on at Ralphie Herald Sun, or it's Robbo, who they chat to every Tuesday. Robbo's been doing a live chat every Tuesday for the last 3 years. And he goes for like 3.5, 4 hours. I wander over to say, you know, you're still going? And he's like, yeah, they're still coming. Yeah, they can't get enough of it, and oddly, he can't either. Which has just been a phenomenal success. But it's all about, you know, we're hoping for our users, we're not just one of many sources of news. We're their preferred source because they know us better. The one thing I will say though about when you send journos off into the online space, just make sure you equip them with a thick skin. I'm really surprised how nice 98% of our users are, but they can be really mean, and they can just take weird dislikes to journos. Ralphie had someone set up a fake Ralphie account for a while. You know, the guy wasn't, I don't think, you know, it's never going to be as popular as fake Fielding or fake Andrew Bolt, but still, you know, I have to manage that because I'm the guy convincing them to go on Twitter, I'm the guy convincing them to do live chats, so, you know, I have to manage their expectations and talk them through what's going on. So I reckon if you build those trusted brands and you're delivering the immediate thing, the next thing that you want to package into unique content, because people can just go to Google News and find out what Ben Cousins is doing. You want them to come to you because A, they know there's going to be regular unique content, and B, that you're going to say something that no one else is saying, and people are going to find that valuable. Part of doing that, I think, is you have to know who you are. The Herald Sun, you know, I'm the sports editor, but I may as well be the AFL editor 90% of the time. That's our bread and butter. That's what people want in this town. You know, we'll cover the NBA finals, but we're not going to cover it like ESPN. We're not going to pretend to be that. It's going to confuse the user. One of the greatest success stories for us has been, and probably for me a surprising success story, is we do a video each day called Footy at 4, where John Ralph and Sam Edmund come up and talk about the big stories of the day. We wanted it to be a very sports centre type, kind of relaxed, you know, take the piss when it needed to be. I didn't know in this day and age whether people would still come, sort of have event viewing, if you like, come back regularly, or whether, you know, you'd have to kind of just hope people came across it. Across the News Limited network, the combination of all the Footy at 4 videos every month is the most viewed video content across news. We get people coming back every day, and anecdotally, it's a lot of people overseas, a lot of people interstate, who can't get, or who don't have the wall-to-wall AFL coverage we have down here, but they know that they can get it in 3 minutes. We try and keep it short. The journalists do love to talk. I think most people love to talk.